Hello, everyone. This is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1, and welcome to the Wednesday Mobilethon. It's hump day today. It's day number 2 of Phil McConnell's house arrest, because that's what it is. And it seems that there are people out there who just can't seem to do some basic research. But we'll get into that as we go along. Now, Phil McConnell has got himself into a halfway decent environment anyway. He's in a nice house. He's with family. And perhaps now, as he interacts with his granddaughter, he might understand what he's been missing all this time by messing around with all these stupid conspiracy theories. Now, Timothy Holmseth has put out yet another one of these articles where he is giving Phil McConnell credit for something that didn't happen. And that is this downed airplane, and supposedly there's a Hague court over 4 suspects that had to do with the downing of that particular aircraft. Now, due to time constraints, I haven't researched to see where he got that information from, but I will do so and maybe talk about it later on. At the very least, there will be a sample of the article for everyone to look at, and they can determine for themselves. But Phil McConnell had nothing to do with that article. There is no proof that the device that Phil McConnell squawked about had anything to do with the downing of that aircraft. Anybody that's followed the story pretty well understands where we're at when it comes to that particular incident. Now, I'm going to touch upon something here. Like I said, this Randy Erickson decided to post something on her Facebook page. And it's this same old chat thing that gets thrown in my face every time Tim Holmseth gets backed into a corner because he cannot tell the truth and he cannot give proof for all the statements he makes. And this is a decades-old fake chat that's been pinned on me by people who don't do their homework. And I have stated, I don't know how many times, how this chat came about. First and foremost, the chat does not exist. It never happened. I never said the things that were in the chat. The chat came about as the creation of somebody known as Renzo Loves Cake. And it came from the website 4chan.com. That's the number 4, CHAN.com. Now, if people would like to take the time to research the reputation that the Chan sites have, there's more than one of them, they would understand 2 things. First of all, it's a site run by trolls, by hackers, by people that like to screw around with people. It is said that 4chan is where Anonymous was born, where the people behind Anonymous started out. And 4chan is also the site of a lot of weird stuff, including child pornography. That's very important. Now, years ago, there was a website that didn't like Tim Holmseth very much. And the owner of that website would write a lot of things about Tim Homseth. And the name of the person was Radio. And the person went by Radio News, RADIONEWZ. And Radio had a blog. And so Radio didn't like Tim Homseth very much, and she went and basically stalked him, wrote about him, accused him of things, did all kinds of things. And me, being monumentally stupid at the time, thought that poor little Timmy was being victimized unfairly by Radio. And Radio was also victimizing other people. And so I took Radio to task, much the same way as I do some people now, like Field McConnell. Because in some ways, Radio was like Field McConnell. But anyway, I defended Tim Homseth's right to state his case. And quite magically, Radio produced this fake chat. Came out of nowhere. It had been around, of course, a little bit earlier than that. I think that thing surfaced sometime around 2010 or thereabouts is when I first heard of it. And I say heard of it because I wasn't in on the chat. I didn't participate. All the words that were in that chat were not mine. Now, like I said, the chat came from Renzo Loves Cake and another individual over on 4chan. And there was another individual in there who went by the handle Monoxide MMAC. So they thought it would be a bright idea to create this little chat. Now, once again, I was the target of the sister of an unregistered sex offender. It had turned out that this woman, who I had seen out on the search for Caylee Anthony, this is how old all this is, had done something in front of very younger underage children, somehow got caught, and I have told this story 100 times how that happened, confessed to 4 counts of lewd acts in the presence of a minor, and was given probation under the condition she testified, against her then husband, who went to jail for the crime. And this was done before sex offenders were required to register so you could look them up and find out who they are. Now it happens that her sister was one of my moderators on my Pal Talk chat. And her close friend was my administrator. She ran things for me. And there was another woman out of Arizona that was also an administrator, or a moderator, excuse me. I had one administrator, and at one time I had 4 moderators, and I wound up getting rid of everybody because of this incident. Now, when this was found out by, of all people, Alexander Goddard, it got published that I had the sister of an unregistered sex offender moderating in my chat. And the sister went on my chat without my permission and declared that the children had lied about what happened and that the mother was forced to confess to the crime because of her politically affluent father-in-law or grandfather-in-law, whatever the hell he was, and that the kids basically were forced to lie. Even though nobody ever explained the fact that there were pictures of the incident, which I believe is how they got caught. Because in those days, when you took a picture of something, you didn't load it into your camera and put it on a flash card. You went down to the nearest drugstore, Walmart, or what have you, and you had it developed. And it's apparent that whoever was doing the developing saw the negatives, saw that it was a sex act, and contacted the authorities. But somehow the incident got reported to the police. And the rest is history. And so, out of thin air came this chat. Couldn't figure out where the hell this came from. It just showed up one day. People were talking about it. Got spread around. And someone started turning these things into local law enforcement. And I also went to local law enforcement. I went to the lead investigative agency for the child, in this case it was Trenton Duckett, where these chats first appeared, that somebody had turned them in to the Leesburg City Police Department. And I talked to them and I said, no, I did not engage in that conversation. It's a complete fake. I then went to the Lake County, Florida Sheriff's Department and talked to them about it. They were aware of it and they said it's clearly fake. You can tell it's fake. Anybody that knows anything about Paltalk and how they operate it would know that this is a falsified conversation. It was done with Photoshop or a similar image manipulation, because they're images. That's all they are. And they didn't bother to properly document the chat. They took pictures. And they took pictures off a monitor. They didn't screen capture the chat. They took pictures of it off a monitor, because you can, when you magnify it, it shows. So basically what happened is someone that is an expert on creating counterfeit material created the chat. Now what's surprising, and what Randy Q. Erickson and Timothy Holmseth refused to do, is to publish the confession. Somebody actually confessed to it. What is interesting, and what Tim Holmseth does not report, are two things. First of all, Monoxide MMAC eventually went to jail for the possession of child pornography. Now, people want to look his name up. It's Joshua Wayne Melton, M-E-L-T-O-N. There's a mugshot of him. All the history about monoxide MMAC is out there. There's blogs that have been written about him. He used to joke about raping and beating up women. He sent links to a child pornography site to a chat where Leonard Padilla, a well-known bonding agent, bounty hunter, was discussing missing Haley Cummings, or Casey Anthony and Kaylee Anthony and so on. He was discussing the case, and Monoxide put this right in the middle of his chat. Well, this got the attention of authorities, and based on other things that he did, he was arrested and put in jail. But no, Tim Holseth doesn't report that. This man that is concerned about missing children, the man who should have asked what connection Monoxide MMAC and Renzo Loves Cake and all these other people had to Trenton Duckett, Kaylee Anthony, Haley Cummings. But no, all he's interested in is this stupid chat. Now, I also found out in checking that these people did not have to hack into my account, into Facebook, or into my Paltalk account. Because like I said, I had 3 people voluntarily running my website. And the sister was one of those that had the login information for that account. She could sign on as me. I did that because this thing ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was a wide open chat that people could talk on 24/7. And they would moderate it, or at least they were supposed to. And so one or more of these individuals gave the people from 4chan my login information, and they turned around and created the chat. And for whatever reason, instead of making a copy of it, which you can do, they took pictures of it. And what the sheriff told me was that they probably did that because they did not want to get it traced back to whoever created the file. Because it would have been embedded in the file how the chat was created. There'd be a timestamp, all kinds of stuff in there that a forensic examiner could look at to determine how the chat was created. But because it was a photograph, an image, they couldn't do the proper investigation, and that's how they know it was fake. And there were other reasons that it came out that it was a fake chat, but it was a fake chat. And Tim Holseth was given this explanation, and he disregarded it. He said, "Oh, I don't have the time to investigate that. It's his responsibility because he's the one being accused. He's going to have to investigate it," which I did. But you see, that's how Tim Holseth operates. This man brags that he is an investigative journalist, that all he is interested in is the facts. But when he is given exculpatory evidence to explain how this chat may have been created, he completely disregards it. He says, "No, I'm not going to bother with that. I know he's guilty." And it's the same with everything else that Tim Holseth has done. His reports are one-sided, they're biased, and they're created for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to quiet dissent. He does not want to be criticized. He does not want to be questioned. He doesn't want any of that. He wants to be able to say anything he wants. He wants to accuse anyone he wants and not be challenged. And so when someone comes up with questions about the validity of what he claims, and, you know, the facts that he puts out there, like this Pentagon Pedophile Task Force, he goes back, finds 10, 15, 20-year-old stuff to gaslight you with, so that you'll back off, so that you'll leave him alone. And it's a pattern. You can go back and see that every time that I've struck a nerve with Tim Holmseth, any time that I have got him in a corner on his lies, this fake chat comes out of nowhere. And Randy Q. Erickson is now in the same category. For she realizes that Tim Holmseth has been exposed as a liar and a fool. And she's seeing her little gold mine turn into salt. And so she recreates an article that he published in 2013, which is not the newest article, about these chats, which have been dismissed by law enforcement a long time ago. That neither Randy Erickson nor Tim Holmseth has bothered to go back and try and find the source of these chats, to find who is supposedly on the other side of the conversation, like any good, reputable, and ethical journalist would. Instead, Tim Holmseth and now Randy Q. Erickson engages in rumor and speculation and conduct that borders on slander and defamation of character. Because by spreading this particular article around, Randy Q. Erickson is engaging in defamation of character. Because all I have to do is take her to court, if I had the money to do it, and produce a report by the Lake County Sheriff's Department where they declared that the so-called chat is not evidence of anything. It's hearsay. It's incomplete. The names of the other party in there were not produced. It was not produced how these chats came about, when the chat came about, the day, the time, the hour, so that they could go back to Pal Talk, and ask their IT people to pull up the logs for their chats, which all these companies keep, by the way. Lake County Sheriff's Department did that because I filed a complaint. And they looked into it. And they contacted Pal Talk. And they sent a copy of the chats to Pal Talk, and Pal Talk wrote them back and said, this chat does not exist. It's not in our system. Say, we record by timestamp when these things occur. And it did not occur. And Forensic Examiner asked Pal Talk a question. They said, well, if somebody creates a chat on your template and they don't publish it on the system, will it record? And they said no. They said it has to go through a process where it hits our servers. If they just go on there and create the chat and it's not posted onto the system to where people can read it, then there's no trace of it. And that's why the chats are counterfeit, because it is not on the server for Pal Talk. It was never put on, it was never put out there. Now, this is something else about this chat that people don't understand. This is supposedly a private message. The Pal Talk has something like Twitter, where you can have a private conversation and it doesn't get broadcast, but it gets stored. So that if this chat had taken place on Paltalk, it would have been stored. And since it wasn't stored, it didn't take place on Paltalk. It didn't take place at all. Now, how many times have you folks seen the fake Twitter messages where people make parody Twitters that get photographed and put out there as if somebody made them, and you know it's a fake? They didn't do it. This is how this is done. That somebody will sit there and they will create a conversation, or in this case a tweet. They'll screen cap it or put it through Photoshop, and it's a fake tweet. Everybody knows it's fake. The person that made the tweet didn't make it. This is the same thing with this Paltalk chat. Now, for some strange reason, whoever created this stupid thing didn't know how to take a screenshot, or didn't want to take a screenshot. Instead, they took a digital camera and they photographed it. Because other than some idiot transcribing it, the only examples of this chat that exist are images. They're not screenshots in the normal sense, because if you run it through forensic processing, you're going to find out that it was taken with a digital camera. It was taken with a Canon 1 megapixel digital camera. The original images, the ones that were submitted to the Lake County Sheriff's Department and the Leesburg City Police Department, were taken with a camera. Somebody took pictures of the chat off a monitor. Now, how amateurish is that? But that's how these things were created. And, you know, I've had to put up with this nonsense for a decade. And Tim Holmseth keeps putting this out there because he wants one thing. He wants me to shut up. He wants me to go away and leave him alone, even though he won't do the same. See, I tried once. Actually, I tried 3 times. I just shut off completely talking about Tim Holmseth, because I was getting hammered by both Tim Holmseth and radio. I was getting hit on both sides, and I said, screw it, I've had enough. I quit live streaming. Tim Holmseth and radio are the reasons I quit live streaming, because I got fed up. I took it private. There's a large group that I've been with for 20 years, and we discuss different things. And we do it in private. And so I just confined myself to live streaming in private, and we did our thing in private. I got away from this shit. But every once in a while, my name would come up. And it would come up either through radio or through Tim Holmseth. And a third party that went by the handle of Astro, she had to get involved. So all these people were getting involved in this. And it just got to the point where I said, enough is enough. So I came back and I started in defending myself. And this is the whole reason that I'm here today, is to defend myself against these stalkers. In this case, it's Tim Holmseth and now Randy Erickson, because they can't keep their big mouth shut. So you only have yourself to blame, Tim. Because you were told a long time ago, leave me alone and I'll leave you alone, and you just can't shut up. And another proof of this goes, of all people, Kirk Pendergrass. For Kirk Pendergrass made a video. And in that video, Kirk Pendergrass points out that a lot of things that happened were because Tim Holmseth could not keep his damn mouth shut. That Tim Holmseth kept shooting off his mouth and he ruined everything. And so that's why Tim Holmseth and Kirk Pendergrass are going after each other. Because Kirk Pendergrass told Tim Holmseth to shut up. Don't open your big mouth. Quit talking. Stay away from the subject. But no. Tim Holmseth had to prattle on. Tim Holmseth had to be the big shot. And look at what happened. Field McConnell is now under house arrest because of Timothy Holmseth. Field McConnell is under house arrest because he listened to Timothy Holmseth, and by extension, Randy Erickson. Now, Tim Holmseth goes around claiming that Field McConnell's this big hero, that the family court put a gag order on him, and no, that's not what happened, because the gag order said one thing and one thing only, and that is that Field McConnell needs to leave Kim alone. Period. He could talk about airplanes and droning and Russian plots and Ukrainian plots until he turned blue in the face. He just had to drop the name of one woman. One person out of the 3.8 billion in the world. And Field McConnell couldn't do that. Mainly because Tim Holmseth wouldn't let him. This one woman who simply wanted to be left alone is the reason that Field McConnell is in jail. President Trump didn't help Field McConnell out. The governor of the state of Florida didn't help Field McConnell out. The Navy SEALs didn't help Field McConnell out. The postmaster of the world didn't help Field McConnell out. Nobody helped Field McConnell out. And so Field McConnell went to jail. And Field McConnell was in jail longer than Tim Holmseth has been in jail his entire life. And Tim Holmseth has been in and out of jail a lot. And so have other people. And Field McConnell's been in jail longer than any of them. All because he couldn't shut up. Just like his little Padawan, Timmy. Couldn't shut up. They were obsessed over one woman. And it's when you go back and you study the history of both of these men, you're going to see that there was a history there. That Tim Holmseth and Field McConnell have had bad luck with women. The mother of his children fought against him. One of the lawyers that fought against him, or more actually, that represented the mother of Tim Holmseth's children, were women, female lawyers. So naturally, when Tim Holmseth got wind that it was a female lawyer that was somehow involved in the Haley Cummings case, he attacked her. She was a suspect before he even called her. It's part of an overall plan. Anybody that wants to be neutral can see it. You know, Randy Q. Erickson has never met Kim. Never seen her. And yet she pronounced her guilty. And this woman, Randy Erickson, claimed at one time to be an officer of the court, which the claim was more than likely bogus. But Randy Erickson doesn't believe in due process. She doesn't believe in innocent until proven guilty. She's pronounced Kim guilty with no evidence except some ridiculous nonsense that has been proven that Tim Holmseth created. Because Randy Erickson should know that those conversations that are recorded are hearsay until the people that were in the recording come forward and testify that those conversations took place and that they represent true events. This is why none of what Tim Holmseth has is any good. Because these people have to go to court and under oath state that what is in those recordings are true. And the same holds true of the chats. Someone has to go to court, put their hand on the Bible, raise their hand up in the air and swear to tell the truth and state that yes, they were on the other side of those chats and the chats happened. But nobody in the 12 years that those chats have been around has done that. Because the chats did not exist. And if necessary, and if it comes to it, the people that ran my Pal Talk would be subpoenaed into court and they would have to testify as to how those chats were created. Now, as I said, the person that is alleged to be behind those chats, the mastermind, went to prison for sex-related crimes. Monoxide MMAC, Joshua Wayne Melton. Go start doing the Google, folks. His name is out there. Google 4chan.com, the number 4chan.com. Read up on the reputation of those folks. Real eye-opener. If you want anything, XXX rated material, child porn, any of that, those are the places to go. And these are the people that Randy Erickson and Tim Holmseth are promoting. That's the kind of material that these people use to gaslight and defame other people. So that's just another piece of evidence that goes in the files against these frauds, against Randy Erickson, against Tim Holmseth, because she is knowingly passing around false information. But see, that's the thing. There's things about Tim Holmseth that have been published by radio that I don't put out there as fact. That it's quite damning and quite damaging of Tim Holmseth. The accusations that have been made against Tim Holmseth that are far worse than what's been alleged between me. You know, Tim Holmseth doesn't like it when somebody calls him a pedophile and stuff. He gets all upset. But he's free to call everybody else pedophiles and be involved in all this crap on the internet. Selling of babies, drinking of blood, all this stuff. Tim Holmseth has no problem accusing others. But you accuse him, he goes ballistic. He goes nuts. And that's what's happening here. I'm calling him out. I've declared that the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force does not exist. That the Children's Crusade is a fraud. And then what Tim Holmseth is doing is a fraud. And what's his defense? A chat. One chat. that has been disproven by law enforcement a decade ago. That's all he has. That's all Randy Erickson has. Is crap. Because they know they've been outed. They're in a corner. They're trying to work their way out. So they come up with a diversion. They sit there and say, oh, look at this thing that Mert did. Can't even produce the originals. They have to sit there and produce a transcribed version of it. Text. Because it doesn't exist. There is no chat. One of the people responsible for creating the chat confessed to it. But he doesn't take that into consideration. This is the kind of person that Tim Homseth is in. So all you people out there that think that Tim Homseth is the greatest thing in spilt milk, just look at that. Yeah. That chat is pretty bad. But is it real? That's what you gotta look at there. You gotta look at everything. Number one, I don't have a criminal record of any kind. None. And the worst thing you'll find if you do a background check on me is I got a ticket for a mud flap that came off my trailer. That's it. A mud flap. It's one of the women responsible for the creation of this chat went on and said, oh, Mert got a ticket for a missing mud flap. And then she had to ask, what the hell's a mud flap? Somebody had to tell her what it was. Because she couldn't figure it out. A lot of people out there probably don't know what a mud flap is. But this is the kind of shit that people comes up with. But I've never had a DUI. I've never had an entry in there for burglary, trespass, any of that. You'd be surprised how clean my background is. And if you were to check deeply enough, what is in my background of a positive nature that would surprise the shit out of a lot of people. But the fact of the matter is, I'm innocent. And I usually don't go this deep in this chat, but I get fed up every once in a while because this stuff has been proven for years, and these people keep bringing it up because they have nothing. They can't even defend themselves. This is what's funny about this is because they're doing the thing with the chats because they can't defend themselves. They can't come out and say, well, he's wrong because of this, this, and this. He's wrong because of these chats. Or this chat. And they can't go back and read about the 50 times that I have put on my various blogs how these chats came about and the fact that they're fake. And that law enforcement says they're fake. Now, Tim Homseth has sent these, at last count, to 10 different law enforcement agencies. He sent it to Putnam County. He sent it to the FBI. He sent it to his own state law enforcement officers. I think he sent it to Polk County Sheriff, the city of East Grand Forks, and the state of Minnesota. They've all got copies of these chats. Sent by Tim Homseth and Tim Homseth only. He just spread this stuff all over the country. And not one law enforcement agency has bothered to contact me about it. I find out about it when Tim Homseth writes about it. Now, this is a man. Remember, the source of these chats that everybody talks about, including Randy Erickson, is a guy that says he is the press secretary for an agency of the federal government that nobody can prove exists. That the Pentagon has even said doesn't exist. And that's this Pentagon Pedophile Task Force. It does not exist. Now, one of these days, Timothy Homseth and people like Timothy Homseth who keep declaring that the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force exists are going to go to jail because it's against the law to impersonate an agent or an officer of a government agency. And they're making money off it. And one of these days, The law enforcement's going to come knocking at your door and say, okay, Randy, okay, Timothy, let's go. Because I guarantee you, if this ever goes to court, if I can ever come up with the $5,000 to $10,000 to file a lawsuit, the first question I'm going to have asked of Randy Erickson and Tim Homseth on the stand in a court of law under oath is, does the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force exist, and can you prove it exists? And they're going to have to say under oath, yes, no, or maybe. You know, that's when we'll find out about the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force, is when these people are under oath. Right now, they're not under oath, so they're free to say anything they damn well please. They're breaking the law, but they're free to break the law right now because the investigation's not complete. The federal government's just letting them bury themselves. They're collecting evidence. They're waiting to the day when their lies get to the point where they can drop the hammer. So, you know, Randy wants to keep publishing this crap. If Timothy Homseth keeps wanting to publishing this crap, even though he's been warned before that he's just digging himself a hole. You know, because these chats that they use against me is eventually going to turn around and be used against them. They just don't realize it yet. They don't understand that when you start putting false material out there, false information against people, it can come back to haunt you. Now, Tim Homseth sued me. He sued me, and he sued Kim in the state of Virginia. And what Tim Homseth should have realized, if that lawsuit had gone through, the first question that would be asked of him on the stand in a court of law would be, does the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force exist, and can you prove it? He would be asked if he is the spokesperson for the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force, and if he had a relationship of some form with the President of the United States. And he would have to answer these questions under oath. And so would anyone else called in. Randy Erickson, since she is his handler, would be called into court as a material witness. And she would have to testify under oath in court after putting her hand on the Bible, representing this God she pretends to believe in, would have to testify. And I would be there in court testifying the fact that these chats do not exist, that it's a fabrication that was brought about in part because of a sister of an unregistered sex offender, because she would be called into court along with those administrators, and they would have to explain how these chats were created. And this would blow everything up. So people need to start thinking of this when they spread this stuff around, that if I ever win the lottery or come into enough money, I'm going to start suing people just to get them in court and get them under oath. I don't care if I can't get a judgment against the people, but I will have their statements in court under oath. This is my goal. So if I win the lottery or come into a lot of money, watch out, because I will get to the bottom of all this. But anyway, now that I've blown my steam for the day, I will be watching and waiting to see what else develops in this wonderful, wild, and wacky world on the internet. We'll see if eventually the Broward County Courthouse can come up with some documents so that I can discuss this case. It's probably not going to be in time for the weekend, but I'll figure something out. Until then, everybody have a good hump day, Wednesday. God bless you all. And until then, this is William K. Murtaugh, Murt Witness 1. Have a good one.